that is the type of scene that James Cameron's looking at going like, cinema.
Yes.
Cinema.
When we're talking about entertainment here, the book from start to finish was purely that. It wasn't more, I wasn't invested in the stakes. I can't do a walking impression, but
wow. Where is the good meat?
That's it.
Welcome everyone to the Tuna Rail podcast. My name is Richard.
My name is Austin.
Today we're talking about the new-ish Joe Abercrombie book, The Devils. Not set in the First Law universe. It's its own new thing, new series, new trilogy starting out. This is a book one. Question, is this Abercrombie true to form for all of his existing fans, or is this a good entry point for you to start getting into Joe Abercrombie's work? We will answer those questions and more.
Spoiler free for the first 15-20 minutes, as always. Then we'll get full on spoilers. We'll give you that spoiler warning. There's a bit to cover in the spoiler free section because we did this for our book club of the month with the patrons and had shotgun spread of opinions on this. Some loved it. Some thought it wasn't Abercrombie's best. We sit somewhere in the middle.
Yep.
And we'll explain why. We'll give our spoiler free thoughts on that. But the basic premise of the book is Suicide Squad in alternate history Europe. You have a werewolf, an elf, magician, necromancer, cast of characters, a cursed knight, cast of characters that are going off to Troy, and it is ordered by the Pope.
Yep. The Pope has their own cast of monsters. When the mission is too hard, you bring in the devils.
Mm-hmm.
That is the premise of the book. So the devils have to take someone to Troy, and then we will... At that point, and then hijinks ensue. It is a whole quest. That's the basic back of the book plot.
I would say similar books to this are other Abercrombie books.
Yes.
If you've read other Abercrombie books, it's kind of like that.
If you've read Best Served Cold, it's a lot like that. A lot like that.
Abercrombie does have a style. Can you compare it to if people haven't read Abercrombie to go, oh, this is what to expect?
Abercrombie, the thing that he does best, really out of many, many authors, is amazing character voice, unique wit and charm. You love the narration inside these characters' heads. How they play off of each other is always incredibly entertaining in often a very grim world with some degree of some hope. These characters are not... Joe Abercrombie very rarely ever writes characters that are detestable to a reader. He makes very detestable characters quite charming to follow. And that's Joe's charm. He's a master at it. He's able to make torturers your favorite heartwarming character. He's able to make like absolute villains become, heroes in the reader's eyes. And that is, explored even further with the Devils.
Obviously, if you're a Grimdark fan, you probably like this. I'm curious what you think of, should this be somebody's first Abercrombie book they pick up? Or would you recommend different order?
Personally, I think First Law is a better entry point. Just, personally, I would say read The Blade itself first. But this is not a bad entry point, especially for someone who... maybe the setting is more up their style in general.
We found that this was the case too, talking with patron group, just talking with the book club and with each other. People that had read First Law beforehand couldn't help but compare this to Abercrombie's other books. So if you've read other Abercrombie books, then read this. This is not always the case. I know that I will list plenty of other reviewers out there that have said otherwise. But you could read this and constantly compare and go, oh, it's just a less good version of the other thing I like. Mm-hmm. However, other people did read the First Law, then this, and thought, well, this is something different, but also does it to the same quality, to the same degree.
Yeah.
We'll get more nuance on that. But I want to say this. We emailed Joe Abercrombie and asked him the question. I was curious about how he came up with the idea for the Devils. I thought it would be a cool factoid to go, oh, this is where this whole Suicide Squad-esque mission came from. And he responded saying this. These are, in the words of Lord Grimdark himself, He says, "Hey fellas, honestly tough to split all this original thinking up. The characters were very much devised as a group. Part of the point of the book was to write an ensemble cast so they were all balanced against each other. The concept of the Pope keeping a set of monsters was probably the first thing, which went back quite a long time. Then when I came to plan this book, the questions were who would the monsters be and what their mission would be, and who would be the ordinary folks caught up in this mess." So that's kind of where the ideation process came from for him. And another cool little tidbit of news, Rich, that we heard, 2 days ago, as of recording this episode?
Yep.
James Cameron's company, Lightstorm, announced the acquisition of The Devils. And apparently, James Cameron, who directed films such as Avatar, Avatar: The Way of Water, the second one, Titanic,
Good
many
movies
others.
like the Titanic, yeah.
Yeah. Avatars, they look good, but story's not quite there. So James Cameron
visuals plus Joe Abercrombie writing.
However,
Not a bad combo.
A lot of Abercrombie writing, though, is that internal dialogue. And
we'll see how it works.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. And because it does seem like this has more credibility than other books that are just optioned, because his personal... Go ahead, yeah.
It's something to realize with, movie company acquisitions of book rights is it happens so often. 99% of them just fall through and they buy the rights just to have them and just to hold a reservation. And to the movie studios, it's cheap compared to missing out on an opportunity. So when you see a company like, oh, they bought the rights, it normally doesn't mean that much. This case is a little different. And
we also have the words of James Cameron. He sounds very happy and excited who doesn't when they're buying out an idea? But here's what James Cameron says. "How do I describe The Devils? A sharply witty horror adventure, an epic battle between good and evil, except most of the time you can't tell which is which, a twisted, stylish, alt-universe, middle-aged romp where your best hope of survival is the monsters themselves. This is Joe Abercrombie in absolute peak form, opening up a whole new world, an ensemble of delicious new characters. The twists and turns come at a roller coaster pace, and with Joe's signature wit and style. The Devils showcases Joe's jaundiced view of human nature in all its dark, selfish glory, as told through some decidedly unhuman characters. But of course, Joe always teases with the flickers of redemption that make it all worthwhile and ultimately quite heart-wrenching." And he goes on to say this. He says, "I've loved Joe's writing for years, cherishing each new read throughout the epic style of the first Law books, especially Best or Cold. Love it." And that's him saying love it as well. I haven't read it yet. And the Age of Madness trilogy. But the freshness of the world and the characters in The Devils finally got me off my butt to buy one of his books and partner with him to bring it to the screen. I'm looking forward to writing the process with him, though I'm certain this adaptation will practically write itself because Joe writes very visually, as you were saying, Rich, almost in scenes and with a very cinematic structure. I can't wait to dig into this. And while he's finished his Avatar: Fire and Ash, blah, 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 then Abercrombie comes on to add that he is over the moon, essentially. And he says, "No one can balance mind-blowing action and spectacle with gut-wrenching personal stakes and story the way he does," talking about James Cameron, and he can't think of anyone better to bring the weird and wonderful monster of a book to the screen. And Rich, this was part of the criticism that we've seen from others as well. A lot of people were saying this book reads like a movie script, as if it was made for the big screen. Do you think that's the case? Was Joe writing this in mind going, I want to break in?
I doubt it. For the most part, Joe just writes a certain way that is very visual. I would say there's the more important component is, at least my favorite part of Joe's writing, is all of the internal dialogue of playing with the characters speaking out loud, and then the little asides that where most of the humor comes from is inside the character's head and their catchphrases and all of these, their own repetitive tropes that they create for themselves. That's where a lot of the humor and joy comes from reading Joe's work. So I'm curious how that kind of that kind of dialogue will be handled in this story, especially with a movie and all.
Yeah.
In comparison, there's something similar that I've been watching recently. I've been watching the Murderbot series on Apple TV Plus. Is it Apple TV Plus?
Apple TV?
Apple TV, whatever.
Might have a plus.
Plus, probably somewhere. Anyway, similar thing of Murderbot. A big joy of the book is hearing all of Murderbot's internal dialogue in his head
Mhm.
and comparing and contrasting that for what he says and what others say and then what he's actually thinking. Apple TV like literally just shows it. Like you literally get the in-head narration from the character, which I'm very happy they did. If they didn't do that, it would be a much worse film. It would be a much worse project. I'm wondering if they will do something similar here. But often you don't get that very often in movies where you're directly inside the character's head.
It's also very hard to.
Yeah, well, it's hard to make it really natural unless I
It's
guess
easy
you
to
commit
put
it
a
to it.
voiceover. That's
Yeah, no,
that's
it's
the hard part is to do it well.
Yeah, technically easy, but execution can come across as odd. Murderbot works because it's a robot and it just kind of flows well.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how it'll work with this book.
Yeah, and you get a lot of point of view shifts in this book as well, even within chapters, which I don't know if he does that as much with First Law, if I'm remembering correctly.
Not as much, but it does happen.
So spoiler free, still staying spoiler free on the book. I'm gonna intersperse some other people's thoughts that have done book reviews on this, and also our thoughts. Let's start with yours, Rich, of just overall impression before giving your rating. Do you have a quick way to kind of explain your middling thoughts to above it?
Sure.
You liked it well enough, right?
Joe Abercrombie is one of those writers that his standard and bar is raised above many other authors that I will pick up. Like, he's already raised the bar. I don't think Joe ever writes a bad book. And so this, for me, is not my favorite of Joe's works, but it's certainly a book of quality. And so I would never say that this book is bad. My main middling thoughts is it was really hard for me to separate this book from a lot of other works that Joe has written, and it kind of took me out of the story a bit. And so I'm wondering, would I have enjoyed this book more if it was my first introduction to his works?
Yeah, that's why when it comes to recommending a introduction to Abercrombie for people, this might be a good one just for the fact you could probably enjoy it more, and then if you go to read Abercrombie's other works, also enjoy those and think possibly that they're better. Because I think the constant
thing... You may like those even less.
You might, because you're reading this and getting used to these kind of characters. I think the point you're getting at, too, is some of the Abercrombie characters and archetypes can have overlap and similarities with other Abercrombie characters you've read. Not other characters in other books you've read, really, but Abercrombie has a type. So you're seeing that, and often when you were reading the book, you were going, oh, this is enjoyable. I just like this other similar, different, but similar enough character where you just think of the better thing in your head while you're reading this.
The main thing for me is this is now like the third time of
seeing that.
When reading First Law, I loved the characters, and then reading the standalone-ish kind of Best Served Cold, I was frequently reminded of like, oh, this is like this other character, the same series, but a little, yes, different, but I'm seeing these characters fill these certain archetypes and roles and a very similar character structure and voice. And then I got it a third time here, and so I'm going like, okay, I'm starting to see the pattern. And when you see the magician's trick, it takes you out of the magic a little bit, at least for me.
My thing with the Abercrombie's books I've read so far, this seems to be the consensus. If you look at the 6 ways we break down a book, or the 6 aspects that we see make up a fantasy book, Abercrombie can always, most of the time, for the biggest fans, get a 5-star, like, oh my God, that's the best. For characters, for writing, the prose, and for emotional impact. That's what Abercrombie does well. Those 3 can sometimes be 5-star, like, wow. That's why I love Abercrombie books, and all that just blows you away. But then when it comes to plot, world building, and themes, I find that I'm not going to read an Abercrombie book for those 3 things: the plot, the world building, and the themes. And so anybody going into a book, I would say especially this one, because I'm sure not Hero of Ages,
we have not read Age of Madness.
Yeah.
We've heard things about that our thoughts may change.
Our thoughts could change, yeah. And so I want to emphasize here, I agree with the point of an Abercrombie, he's way too good of a writer, as in actually the words on page. He's too talented at that to read a book and go, this is bad quality. This is a quality book, and I could see anybody that reads this, and there's a specific chapter in here as well that's, I think, one of his best written chapters of the 4 books I've read of him. Just the descriptions, what James Cameron was saying in there, the visceral, the oh my goodness, I can't wait. This looks like it's cinema. Of course, you're going to get that out of the book, which leads me into I thought it was a quality book. I was entertained, but it's not something I'm going to think back to quite often. It's a 3.5 star good book. It's a good book, and I'm going to have positive things to say and also criticisms, because I think the main criticism, the humor was focused on a lot in this book, and I don't think a lot of it hit. However, it's a mixed bag with it just being quality. So what do you think? I know your rating.
Yeah, my rating's the exact same as a 3.5.
Yeah.
Good book. Book is good. But I feel very similar to you.
I think the best categories for this, I think for me, it was prose for this book. And then behind that was characters.
I have the exact same thing. Yeah. The number one was prose, and then behind that characters.
Lowest for me is the world building and the thought provokingness. Now, again, this is a book 1, so how much in the themes does it get? This is another thing. There's some controversy. The book's called The Devils. It's alternate history Europe, and it puts a big spin on the Catholic Church of things that you'll see immediately that just could be insulting to some of faith. And when we were discussing the book club, some took that personally, and it could also be something that you see as just he doesn't do it out of malice. Other people look at it and they're Christians and go, okay, this is just a different twist on the Catholic Church.
He just changes it because he thinks it would be interesting to write. It would make an interesting setting.
But it is important to note for anybody going to read this, if that type of stuff, you don't want to see something that could feel as if it's attacking your faith and you're Christian or specifically Catholic, it does go right into it and just changes the doctrine, but also keeps it close enough to the doctrine where it could seem like a mockery. So that could come across to somebody as they're reading this book.
Yeah, there is some sensitive changes of it is strange of discussing with our book club of it's close enough that it is in many ways representing the faith, but also it changes the more sensitive aspects of the faith. And so it's this weird gray line where it's not complete fantasy religion or like, hey, look, this is inspired by the Catholic Church. No, it's called Catholic Church, but makes some significant changes to things like the Eucharist, the holy nature of the Pope, Jesus, and just her nature, actually, in this book. That is one of the changes. So it's
you find
strange.
This is all early on stuff, too.
Yeah, this is early stuff. So I find that interesting. I'm not a Catholic myself, but I thought the discussion was interesting. So it's worthy to mention.
The first page of this book, page 1. So if you don't like page 1 spoilers, I'm sorry. Page 1 of this book has this character, Brother Diaz, repeats the line, God damn it, several times, and just obviously saying the Lord's name in vain. Already, Joe's hitting you with a shock value and just taking you a character, obviously detestable, lovable, villain, good. All the words you can use to define Abercrombie characters is right from the get-go. Now, those were our thoughts. Now, we have thoughts to kind of widen your spectrum here from other booktubers. Matt's fantasy book reviews. He's always got great stuff. I like looking at his. He finishes a book and gives his quick reaction. He's very honest. So he said that this book could very well go down as his favorite book of 2025. It's his favorite so far, and he loved it. He said it was the best first book of an Abercrombie series. So take that from Matt. Then you have the brothers Gwynn, Will, 4.25 out of 5 stars, and Ed also liked it. Daniel Green gave it a 7 out of 10. He admires aspects more than he loves it, which I think I very much align with that thought process of I admire aspects more than I like, oh yeah, I'm going to pitch this book to everybody.
I get you. Yeah.
And Tori Morrow also gave it a 3.5 stars and said she enjoyed it overall, but found it humorous in a way that just felt a little tiresome after a while. Also thinks in a few places the jokes banter detracted from what could have been some great character moments. Very much agree with that. And then we have Nerd Level Rising. I need Nerd Level Rising shout out because I looked at his review and felt the exact same kind of feeling I had where he said it was such a unique reading experience because he's never had a time where he was excited reading it and was feeling like, oh, this is good. This is good. But also just wanted to read the next book in his TBR. weird paradox of you're reading going, oh, this is good quality. I'm having fun, but I kind of just, I want to get to the next book now. And maybe the feeling you get is the book's plot pattern here is like, you'll get it right away. And you get I guess you could read the first part of this book and first several chapters and go, okay, I know how this book's going to go. And it's going to be a fun romp.
Yeah. I mean, I think we'll get more to it in the spoiler section, but what fueled that for me was pretty early on. I thought the thought-provoking nature just kind of really wasn't there, or at least what I was really looking for in most novels that I read. And then, pretty early on, I knew what the plot was going to be from beginning to end, and I wasn't wrong, really, in general scope.
Not that there's not twists. There's stuff
but there's micro twists and things like that, but you generally know what the story is going to be. And that combination of factors of I wasn't reflecting too much throughout the book, of there weren't any real scenes that I was like, when I put it down, that I thought of, and like, so I didn't have any reflection moments, and I didn't have any curious moments of what's going to happen next. And so it allowed me to basically put down the book with like, I don't need to think. I'm not thinking about what's going to happen, and I'm not thinking about what has happened, which is probably the wrong place to be when you put down the book. But
that to me is the definition of entertainment. Shut your brain off. Just, it's a distraction. It's going, oh, fun, distraction, but not something you're going to think about afterwards.
Yeah. That's what I thought. It's a very entertaining book.
Yes. And we have from our community and our Patreon book club, Judgmental said it's a great entry for Abercrombie, emphasizes his strengths and weaknesses. It's the best prose he's seen from Abercrombie. World building, plot, not as good, but the qualities are so good that he just can't rate it below 4. And then we have Emily said, I think the characters and character voices are only so good because of the prose. I didn't even finish First Law, and it felt derivative. The prose was amazing, especially the dialogue, which again makes the characters pop. And if you take away the humor element that some people mentioned, I love the action. I always knew where I was and what people were doing because the action was very clear. And then we have Nick. Shout out Nick. If you don't find this funny, most of the comedy reminded me of poor crowd work. Missed the boat on humor. So you'll see that's some of the pattern in these reviews. And Sorok said strength of characters was great and action scenes were great. And lastly, our biggest critic, Levy, who gave it a 2 stars. He said the cast was overcrowded, which I will actually agree with that criticism. I think the cast was a little overcrowded to the point where we didn't even get one of the cast's point of views, which we'll get into that a little bit. But if you want to join our community book club, check description down below. To our next book of the month is a V.E. Schwab book, the Dark Side of Magic, the
Darker Shade of Magic.
That's it.
A darker shade of magic. Yes.
Exciting. Do you want to add anything else before we get into spoiler territory for the Devils?
I'm ready to talk about this book.
All right. The Devils, spoiler warning. Click off if you don't want spoilers, you devils.
I did have one last thing before.
They already clicked off. What are you going to do now?
Oh, no.
Say the thing. Whoever didn't click off.
Before spoilers, here's our ratings. Look on screen.
Yes.
Nick, thank you very much. This is what we rated the book in each category. If you want to know why we gave it that, you'll have to go in the spoiler section.
Great catch. Yes, there it is.
I remembered.
Good stuff. All right. You want to say spoiler warning now? The real spoiler warning.
Now, real spoiler warning. We're good to go. What did you give the emotional impact score?
A good 3.5 stars. Good.
I gave it a 3.25.
Above average.
Ooh.
Oh, I had a 0.25 better time than you. Because, again, this can all be broken down into the numbers. So
yeah, exactly. We're really narrow with it.
So, want me to begin with a scene?
Go ahead.
Okay, so obviously the intentions, the emotions here that I see, it's trying to get a good thrill out of you, entertainment of, action, fun, let's go. The scene that did that the most for me was the good meat.
I think I have a scene here for
the good meat.
Do you want me to read off the scene? I think
is it the good meat scene? Oh,
this scene.
This scene.
Yeah, or is that the different one?
That's a good meat. Yeah,
it's the good. Okay,
yeah.
Want me to read that off for you? Just the excitement. Maybe this should go in prose, but who knows?
People that continued on and don't know the book. So, what was the good meat?
So, from the beginning of the book, there's a little bit of a tease, a little bit of a setup of this. We have our whole cast of devils. We got the vampire, we got the elf, we got the magician, all these different different freaks, that are Suicide Squad. And then we're teased that there's another member, but they have to be kept separately, and they are incredibly dangerous. And then when they start on their mission, everyone's kind of out, except this one werewolf that's stuck in they're dragging along in this cage. And so they're attacked. Everything's going to shit. It's all terrible. Ah, no. And in the last desperate moment, our one of our main characters frees Viga the werewolf from her cage, and the slaughter begins. The Viga wolf screamed with fury and delight to be out of the horrid wagon, and once again at her work, which was murder, and her hobby too, also murder. She didn't know or care why this bastard had a bull's head. Folks all have their own different heads, don't they? She slipped under his axe and ripped it from his fists, smashed off one of his horns with it, then flung it at the rabbit girl on the wall and split her skull in half. Then she clawed the bull's guts out with her fists, snarling, weeping, spraying drool, snuffling for the good meat, the nice bits, the tasty morsels. People's heads might all be different, but their insides are much alike. Her jaws snapped shut on a woman with a piggy head, got her head and arm together, squeezing, and beat away with a shield, clobbering with the rim as the Viga wolf snarled in frustration. The bits of arm still wedged in her teeth, and wriggled her head to get the best grip. Biting, twisting, biting, wrenching, biting. Squeals became screams, then crack. The skull popped, and the Viga wolf sucked the meat out, and ugh, what a horrid, salty mouthful. She choked and coughed and ripped at the foul-tasting pig bitch, and her back claws and tore her so hard the other arm came off, then flung what was left into the bull man, who was struggling up, wailing with guts all hanging out, and the pair of them went reeling across the yard, all the horrid bad meat mashed up together.
That was a great reading, and that is some great prose. That is
the emotion. Like, oh, the visceral, exciting scenes. Like, that is the type of scene that James Cameron's looking at going like, cinema.
Yes.
Cinema. That's what you need.
Mm-hmm. And some of the scenes, you feel as though they were constructed to have a cinematic element to them. Oh, you need to, I think Levy was saying this in the book club, setting up in the cage to have out of the darkness comes the werewolf, and that is a scene that seemed as though it was made for the big screen.
Now, if this was made on the big screen, that scene in particular, would you want it to play out like the book of you see the monster first, the outside, and you don't get the monster's thoughts, of course, because it's thinking the stuff, and then would you want to jump into the mind and hear the narration of the werewolf while it's ripping apart its victims?
The best part about that scene is the internal monologue of ripping out. It's less cool just to see the action. I've seen violence on screen. It's all about the tastiness of
the werewolf just getting into it, going like, where's the good meat? Like,
that's the thing. And the werewolf Viga, when in this werewolf form, can't speak properly to others. So even when growling or saying something that to her, she's asking, where's the good meat to others? And it just comes out like, so if that's a movie adaptation, are they just going to have the voice go, what does that mean to us? It doesn't. So decisions have to be made by the team there.
Like you need to, just the phrase of like the werewolf asking the question, like, where's the good meat? Like that's what you need. I don't care how James Cameron does that, but that phrase needs to be somehow transferred from the werewolf's mind. I don't know how, but do it.
There's some wrong ways of having Owen Wilson go, wow, where's the good, or a Christopher Walken coming in. I can't do a Walken impression, but
wow, where is the good meat?
That's it. That's a wrong way of doing it, unless you just want to completely go into the humor out. Yes. So scenes like that were I love that. So again, these scenes isolated on their own, fun, enjoyable, visceral, action. Love seeing it. That's very. just how well written it is makes the scene enjoyable. All the emotion just comes from the way Abercrombie's writing it. If this scene was obviously written poorly, and it's not even that at this point in the story, I'm not even attached to Viga yet, or I'm not even
even just the fact that
in
action is happening of, oh yeah, Viga is very strong and bloody. Like, who cares? It's the mental description and being inside the mind of this vicious werewolf and the skill of which he writes. That's what's emotional. That's what's gripping.
That's the good part, because otherwise it's not that I'm reading the action in other books going, oh, I'm loving the action, and I'm also invested in the conflict between the characters' action and what's going to happen and how will this affect. No, this is just pure attack. And so that was a fun aspect for me. I have a couple other I have this structured with my positives on the motion, the negatives. Do you have any piece you want to get into before I go to? I have a couple bullet points.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now, next one I have, I'll just go through all positives. Another main positive was relationship between characters is always well done, where it's fun. I was less invested in isolation with some of the characters and more when they were in packs and they were split off into twos. Even though that part could have been slower, it's just he's always good at riffing and having you put Brother Diaz and Viga together. And
that was my favorite pairing of, just having the, brotherly priest with the, vicious
sex addicts,
vicious horny werewolf. And somehow they just play off each other well. There's particularly a very good scene which kind of enamored me to the pairing was, again, it's his character work that gets you emotionally attached to them, of Viga being in her head and seeing both her thought process and how disconjointed her thoughts come out to the other people. No one understands her when she's trying to hold a conversation, and almost like this whole from the movie up, like Doug the dog just going like squirrel, like quite literally is that. But you see Brother Diaz actually try to hold a conversation with her and understand her, and to some degree does. And it's this interesting pairing of like, oh wow, he is like, they have an understanding, and it's cute. And so it's a heartwarming connection.
Yeah. Heartwarming. That is a way of putting it.
Like, I don't know. It makes you feel that it's the dichotomy of everyone else treating her completely like a monster or something to be tolerated and annoyed, and no one even bothers to try to understand her, and she doesn't care either.
Yeah.
But Brother Diaz having enough patience to attempt to understand her is endearing.
Yeah. It's weird to put, like, you feel endeared in this. Abercrombie does do this where detestable characters, but you feel for them. And I can't say that I was personally, oh wow, Brother Diaz. Well, let's say that for characters. Okay, so on just the emotional side, that was another aspect. Another good scene to me was the demon summoning scene, and this is where Balthazar, even Droxy. I have all the character names written down. Sham. Balthazar Sham, even Droxy, the third best magician and necromancer in Europe. And this whole entire book, he's trying to break the papal binding that was given to him at the beginning of the book. And he's doing all he can with magic to the point where he summons a demon and asks the demon, get rid of this binding. And the demon says, I can do whatever. What do you want? I can do anything. I'm a demon. He says, okay, get rid of the binding. Demon goes, oh, anything except that. He's I can't actually do that. And then it's a simple thing, but it was a memorable scene, and also meant a lot for Balthazar's character, for why he goes from this prideful, not believing in Alexia whatsoever, to slowly the Pope.
You're confusing the Pope and Alexia.
Not believing the Pope, and then starting to believe, oh wait, the Pope, this 10-year-old Pope, might just be a deity or more powerful than
this Pope is the next coming of Christ, basically. Yeah, or at least that is what Balthazar actually now believes.
And the last thing, that's what I got for positives. The writing's so good, feels entertaining, good stuff. Do you have any other positives you want to, just on the emotional side, if that was a scene that got you, or?
Yeah, no, I liked those scenes. We talked about some of the pairings. I think some of the humor was funny. I was laughing along, and Yeah, those are my positives.
That actually brings me into one of my more negatives was the humor in the
Mhm.
book. And I'm not somebody that was laughing out loud the whole time at the first law books to begin with. But okay, couple things with the humor. A lot of it is crude. Obviously, it's an Abercrombie book, talks about feces and
It's crass potty humor,
Yeah.
which Joe does well. If you like crass potty humor, Joe's your man. He's got it with spades, and he does it with enough charm and wit that is high class potty humor. But it is potty
high
humor.
class potty humor. No, this is the potty humor for the elites.
It is.
Yeah.
It truly is.
I think some of that, these sexual jokes, some felt a bit either cliche or childish in the sense that one scene that comes to mind that I wrote this down while I was listening to the audiobook. I marked it and went like, oh, this is an example to bring up.
Mhm.
One of them was this repetitive line. It happened a couple times. This is just a two that I caught it though. Balthazar has a scene where he says, "You bargained with one demon, and that's all anyone talks about."
Yeah.
And this was repeated in the chapter "A Miraculous Medicine," where another character says, Brother Diaz says, "But all anyone wants to talk about is the one time you fucked a werewolf." Right? Everybody's heard the joke of, the one time you fucked a sheep, right?
Yeah.
There's that joke everybody knows where, hey, I went and chopped. It's actually kind of funny when I think of the joke because it's the way your uncle tells you that story and that joke. It's pretty funny. I chopped 100 different trees. No one calls me Joe the tree chopper, and obviously then it gets, but you fuck one sheep. But everybody knows the joke. But these characters were saying these kind of one-liners that I guess we're supposed to come. I mean, the line's there to be a little zinger and be like, look at the humor between the characters. I'm going, And on a similar note, there's there was a scene that felt corny sitcom-ish with the Viga and Brother Diaz when it was revealed that they were sleeping together, and the reveal happens, and you kind of get the other characters going like, "Whoa!" and then Viga's going like, what's wrong? It reminds me of the best version of this, which is in the television show Friends, which is one of the best sitcoms ever. And you obviously have Chandler and Monica and that whole thing. That's just so funny.
That Friends is only positively received because of Laugh Track. Laugh Track carries that show. That's beside the point.
That is incorrect. Friends is top tier sitcom.
No. It
one of
really
Friends.
sucks.
You're a Seinfeld guy, aren't
fine.
you?
I am a Seinfeld guy.
There's actually something called the Seinfeld effect where, that's a long story. Okay. What did you think about the humor?
I laughed sometimes. Sometimes I didn't. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. I thought it was funny at times and funny at not. I liked the joke of basically Brother Diaz being exasperated when it's revealed that he was sleeping with Viga. I liked the line of just him. I thought it was funny situational humor of him being drunk and finally just going, well, actually, screw all of you. I will not be talked down to by a bunch of devils. Screw all of you. She's actually a very tender lover. None of you guys understand. It's like,
yeah.
Got
a smirk out of you.
I smirked at it. I was like, that's fun. It's fun because it was Brother Diaz and how well set up he is throughout the rest of the story of how reserved and just kind of over the edge. And now he's kind of one with the devils. He's not lording himself above them all. He's now down in the trenches with them. He can't be holier than thou. So I liked that moment. But yeah.
You know what they say. Humor is objective. And then you have a couple other scenes here. Do you want to toss out a scene you didn't liked, or spawn something of your own here? Or I can get you to react to more. I've got more.
Go ahead. Keep going.
Do you have something?
I
want to give a shout to. I don't want to say all the scenes. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I liked many of these scenes, but many of them just kind of felt predictable or not as emotionally engaging. All the really positive, emotionally pulling scenes to me in terms of excitement was Balthazar's scenes.
Okay.
And we'll get into plot, but anytime Balthazar is on page and he's always the wild card of, where the plot is going. The only way the plot gets derailed is because of Balthazar, and it's why always his scenes bring a bit more excitement.
Got it. He was probably my favorite character too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's given the most attention, I'd say. Arc, focus. There's more to share, but I think he got a lot of attention. Okay. Another thing that I liked the least. I'll say that one last. This is the second to last, is as far as the team, the Devils. You said predictability, kind of ties into that. As far as the team of the Devils went throughout these 4 parts of the book, we'll detail and plot, but basic premise is part 1, you face Marcy, and at the end, it's Brother 1, and that is trying to kill Alexia. And part 2, you face the next brother, part 3, next brother, part 4. Ooh, Mary's that brother, right? And then Mike gets betrayed by uncle.
Mary's a cousin, not brother.
I always say brother. It's the cousin in each part. Why do I mix those up? Okay, cousin in each part, essentially. And I didn't feel a sense of danger or as if the Devils at any part throughout this journey were going to really lose very much. It felt as if the plot, although structured well, there wasn't that, is Jakob, who's not meant to put the threat of he's going to die because his curse is that he can't die, is immortal, which as a device and everything, cool, fine. It's not that Abercrombie was trying to make you on the edge of, who's going to live, who's going to die. But I guess that's just me to go, when we're talking about entertainment here, the book from start to finish was purely that. It wasn't more, I wasn't invested in the stakes, and that's what I'm getting at. It's not the stakes of the part didn't matter as much as the micro scenes.
It just lacked a little bit of tension, really.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Last thing, this is where a point that I think Abercrombie was trying to make you feel a lot and just fell flat. Baptiste dying at the end.
Yeah, I mean, from our book club, it was discussed. So Baptiste is killed by Vega at the very end.
Yeah.
I mean, constantly told how many other members of the team Vega has killed throughout their time together. And so it's teased over and over, like, Vega's going to kill one of their members. And she kills the one character that I don't think we get a full POV from. I think maybe we get her POV like ever so slightly, but I don't even remember.
I don't remember any.
I don't remember it. So she's the character that is least developed, least shown, many times wondering, like, why is this character even here?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the character that dies. So you don't feel for that character at all. But from our book club, they were talking about how it's not about that character's death. You feel for Vega and how she handles killing another one of her friends. And you feel for Balthazar and his relationship with Baptiste and his reaction to his character arc and kind of developing this human connection with his teammates and finding her dead. So those are the characters you actually get that emotional attachment for, not Baptiste.
Did you like that scene particularly?
I glazed over it. It was like,
yeah,
okay, moving on.
Yeah.
It felt flat for me generally.
And if Baptiste was given more of a character point of view, but also there's a complaint of it was kind of overcrowded. We already had a lot of point of views. So how to juggle that? Do you give Baptiste a point of view and then detract from some of the others, or just have a smaller cast? What do you do in that situation? Do you think there was a way to solve that to make you care and have emotions behind that scene? What would you have done differently?
I mean, hey, guess take it from me, guy who's not written a book, and Joe, who has written great books and being picked up by James Cameron. However, from what I was getting from this book is Joe had this cast of characters he wanted, but ultimately he has plans for the other characters in other books, and they're clearly not the focus this time, and they're kind of in a holding pattern. Like, you get introduced to them, you get to have some moments with them, but ultimately they're not the focus, and they will be focused on another book. Personally, if I wanted to make this book more emotionally appealing to me, I would shrink the amount of characters, so reduce some of the cast, and then the character that actually dies by Vega should be one of the characters we got a POV from in some significance, and then the next book introduce more. That's how I would take it.
Yeah. if Vega killed Sonny, oh my god.
Oh god, that would hurt.
Yeah.
That would hurt a lot.
That would hurt. All right. Anything else before going into thought provokingness? Nothing.
No, other than this kind of carries over into the thought-provoking nature of the book. If your emotion is like your drive to continue and like your kind of general excitement, this book was very easy for me to read. Of like, I never wanted to like put down the book. It was never like a chore to read at all. It read quick, really enjoying all the way through. There was never really a moment where I'm going, oh, I'm not having a good time.
Right.
But when I had to put down the book, it was easy for me to put down the book at almost any point. Like,
and when to pick it back up, right?
Like, I didn't even need to like stop at a chapter. There was like, I could just always put it down and then pick it right back up.
You stopped mid brain eating for Vega one time.
Yeah, so it was easy for me to put down, but also very easy for me to pick it back up.
Got it. Yeah, makes it. I feel the same.
And a big reason for that is the thought-provoking nature of it.
What'd you give that? Did you rate it or did you give it NA? What'd you end up doing? I know you were between the two.
I ultimately decided to give it a 2.75.
Me too.
Yeah.
I gave it 2.75 below average.
Yeah, below average. I'm almost tempted to put NA.
Not applicable. Just don't rate it, right?
Yeah, I almost feel like if we were to ask Joe about it, like, no, there's not a point. There isn't a message. It's a fun cast of characters having like this adventure. That's what it is. I don't think there is a particular message in this story. The character's arc and message through there is, I don't think, very significant. I get it. Kind of where maybe Alex being, growing more confident and like, fake it till you make it type of deal. But other than that, what'd you feel about the
I do think
message?
We when we interviewed Abercrombie, he definitely doesn't seem to focus on themes and elements. Although, of course, there's thematic elements in his books.
They develop over the course of the story.
The characters move, etc. But the way I'd put it is the theme is not the focus. It's not the focus of this book, but it's present enough, especially using the alternate history and having enough elements to where something's being said. And I think I've got to a couple of the things, and it's not that it's poorly done. It's just, again, below average. You've seen that stuff, and it's kind of done as just it's not even bow tied, but I'm just trying to say it's strung together because if you're talking about the devils in an alternate Catholic church story,
the Catholic Church holds a cast of devils to, dirty their hands with missions that, I guess you are saying something.
Yes. And the one moment where I went, okay, something's being said here was, I think, the second to last chapter. Don't remember exactly, but Brother Diaz and Alexia were talking, and Brother Diaz, once they made it and they survived, Brother Diaz is just saying how much, oh my goodness, how did we survive all of this so far? Holy crap. Well, thank God, in a sense. Thank God we made this. And Alexia's going, don't thank God. Look, we made it because of a werewolf that eats people. We made it because of a necromancer who summons demons, and Yekup of Thorn, who has one of the most gritty pasts. Basically, all of these devils are why we made it. Don't thank God, thank the devils, in a sense. And just kind of, when somebody goes into a hospital and a religious person would thank God, and then atheists would say, no, thank the doctor. Right? That kind of thing of, did they make it because God sent these devils to help, or did they make it just because the devils? Because
Brother Diaz does respond saying, well, actually, perhaps God has used it, the tool in God's hands becomes righteous. And so even the devils can serve God's will. And so God saved us through the work of the devils.
That's what Brother Diaz would say.
Yes.
Lexi would be, no, that's bullshit. That's what she said. And so there's also a couple quotes that I think encapsulate the themes here. One of them is, sometimes least worst is the best you can hope for. One of them being, hey, it's the devils you're working with. And another one, happy endings are just stories that aren't finished yet. These are general Abercrombie themes. It's grimdark.
Yeah.
Cool. I might have a bias towards grimdark as well. There's stories that can really pull it off. There are. And because this book wasn't focused on the themes, that is why there's other grimdark books that do grimdark, and those represent those themes much better than this one.
Yeah.
Because they're actually going for something more. And I think that there's more we can get into characters, I think one important one to mention is Balthazar and his entire relationship between believing in the Pope or not, or trying to get rid of this papal binding. And he eventually does believe. It's kind of this faith through reason, whether it's selfish reason, but it's still, oh, this must be powerful. I tried and tested to get rid of this papal binding. Must be the case. But there's more small stuff. That's some of the stuff I wanted to point out. But other than that, I've got okay, church stuff. Can you trick God? What's it saying about the Catholic Church? Anything you want to get into there? Or think it's important enough?
I mean, there was a significant part of our book club discussion.
Yeah.
However, not being Catholic myself, so I'm not nearly as knowledgeable about it. I didn't think Joe is like. I don't think he's actually going after the church in any sense. He's just thought this story would be cool and the setting would be interesting. And he's like, hey, I think if the Pope was a 10-year-old girl, and like that would be funny and interesting to like, it's a funny scene that he had in his head. I don't think he's saying anything about with any malice toward the actual Catholic Church. I don't think so, but I don't know the man's mind. But yeah, I guess there's the other thing, but I'll bring it up in world building.
Yeah.
It's an interesting decision of having
the
Catholic Church be the Catholic Church, altered as it is, but then having the other, because it also takes place, a significant part of the story is Crusades, and the Crusades of the Catholic Church goes on. That's a part of the history of this world, of many of our characters, and also potentially the future. And then you have Muslims. Are Muslims in the story? As far as we know, no. But what fills the Muslims' role is elves. Is there anything meant by that? I don't know.
More world building stuff to get to?
That's world building.
Okay.
That's thoughts for later.
Then character time. Are you ready for? Or did you want to go on to that or just save for?
No.
Okay.
Hey, I mean, below average.
Yeah.
To me, I was between that and an A almost. So
then let's go on to characters. What did you give it out of 5 stars?
Characters I gave a 3.75. Really good. Really good characters.
This is my first 4-star. Great characters.
Yeah, a couple of these characters are really great, and then the others are just kind of good, and so that's kind of where I landed up. I think Alex and Jakob. The audiobook does Jakob. I guess you could say Jacob as well. The immortal man, the vampire, the Baron, and of course Baptiste and Baptiste.
I think so. I think the P's silent.
And also Brother Diaz. All of them were fine to good. Where the standout character for me that were very enjoyable and emotionally grabbing was Viga and Balthazar.
So Viga and Belt, we could start with them and kind of break down how does Abercrombie do these characters? I guess what's so good about them? Do you want to start with?
Oh, also Sunny. I nearly forgot.
Sunny
was my. Don't know if the Sunny is the best character, but definitely my favorite character.
Nice.
She was always the most fun to read from the
Wholesome.
POV. Wholesome, but also very inventive and fun perspective.
Yeah. So to go over, we talked about a little bit there being overcrowded cast. I think that still pertains to this. And you said Balthazar, you said Viga. Which one do you want to talk about? Which one excites you more?
I think Balthazar has the most to talk about, but I want to start with Viga.
Okay.
I think.
Viga, yes.
What was your kind of thoughts on Viga, her introduction? And was she a grabbing character to you, or was it just entertaining and excitement? Or did you feel like there was actually something there to the character that you were attached to?
Emily said this in our spoiler-free section. She said this in her review. I agree with her, where a lot of the characters are also feel good because of the prose sometimes, where even it is elevating the way that the characters are thinking, and it's written so well, and even the action scenes with Viga, you feel as though Viga's more of a character, even though you've seen other characters that are vicious, etc. But this is where the first law versus the devil's comparison comes to my head and my reading, where Viga for me...
It's a spoiler if we give the actual direct comparison.
I won't give the character name or any of that, but there's a character in the first law.
There's two characters
several
that basically merge together, and you get Vega mostly.
Yes, and you could see that with some of the other characters too, of going, okay, there's elements of this character, and you could see some of the device used with Vega and the device used with other characters. Oh, okay, it's this thing that this other character does, that Abercrombie does, and how much do you implement that? So on the one hand, I'm thinking about that, but I'm also comparing Vega to a character who is like, wow, amazing in the first law, a character that you just love to see on the page, and Vega still does that really well. So that's where I give the credit of Vega to me. To your question was getting back to those. Sorry, repeat. Was your
As
question
far as
character goes? Yeah.
Beyond entertaining,
Yeah.
did you find Vega's character like grabbing in terms of a character journey, or were you more just entertained by her scenes?
I was more entertained by her scenes, and I think, I'll leave it at that. Were you more grabbed by her character?
I was.
Yeah.
There were specifically, I already mentioned before, the conversation scenes of the comparing her talking with the entire group and trying to get across her idea, and ultimately being very forgetful and having short-term memory loss. To some degree, it is supposed to be funny because it's, she has like a dog's brain of just constantly getting distracted.
Yeah.
Of her, you just have to leave it like chestnuts, or you have to leave it like nutshells. Don't hold on to them. But I liked a lot of her internal dialogue of how much she focuses on leaving the past in the past and not remembering things, and yet also remembering quite a bit of her past and trying to distance herself from her own monstrous life's journey. I enjoyed quite a bit of that. I enjoyed when she was confronted with her past, remembering her mother, remembering these other characters, and trying to convince herself that she shouldn't think about those things, that it's not important. Don't think about the past. Don't think it's just this coping mechanism. I enjoyed that quite a bit. And then comparing that with how the Brother Diaz actually does try to understand her and can hold conversations with her, shows that she is far more thoughtful than people let on. And a lot of it is just this wall she puts around her. I found that more grabbing, and just especially by the end of her killing another friend, thinking that she has muzzled the beast and being proven wrong yet again. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed her journey, even though if it was a failed character arc, really, that she thinks like, okay, I think I can finally, don't blame the wolf, and constantly leave it as an excuse. Like, I need to take responsibility, control the wolf. I will muzzle the wolf inside. But ultimately she finds out she can't. So I liked that aspect of her character.
I agree with that. Yeah.
So well done. But other than that, she was also incredibly entertaining. All of her action scenes and just her interacting with the other characters was always fun, because she's the wild card. And she's the even if another character's not the straight man, when interacting with, I was about to say Pharaoh. When interacting with Vega, Vega turns the funny man into the straight man, which is enjoyable.
Got it. So with interacting with Brother Diaz, she does that as well?
Yeah. So Brother Diaz, of course, is the standard straight man.
Okay.
But compare, say, Sonny, or you have Balthazar, all these other characters that are more ridiculous and are not the straight men. Balthazar and Vega, Balthazar's the straight man all of a sudden. Sonny would be the straight man in comparison to Vega. It's just kind of, she is the oddball.
She has to be.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
So it's enjoyable. It's why her character interactions between everyone in the cast is probably the most fun.
Yeah. So I think the fun part about her was what she brought out of Brother Diaz, right? It made me like Brother Diaz in those scenes more, where he just gave in to having sex. Was it 4 times?
Yeah.
with Vega, and so her having that temptation and Brother Diaz capitulating, just can't control himself, brought more out of him. I think the device with Vega being a sex addict was another one of those humor things that I was going, all right, I get it. It's crude humor.
it happens enough where you're going like it's the same joke but done maybe a few too many times.
There was the tall man and short man in Venice.
Yeah.
And she spots them and is talking about how, oh, there they are, though. And that's just part of the humor aspect. But as far as her character arc goes and just trying to control that beast in her, cool.
Yeah.
And Viga was your Hulk type, your
Mhm.
last resort weapon. You unleash Viga when all else is lost. Cool character. But what about Balthazar? You mentioned Balthazar von Shamim and Draxi.
Yeah. So
as your next favorite.
well, I think most people would agree with me that has the best character arc of if any character has like a real character arc, it would be Balthazar. If he goes very dynamic, he's the one in the very beginning fighting the hardest to break out of the papal binding that ties him and the rest of the devils to the church, and is resisting this whole mission. Everyone else is kind of given up and going like, hey, if we're forced to be in this group, if we're forced along this path, you might as well try and enjoy it. You don't, it's the idea of if you don't have free will, do you want to be dragged by the wagon of life, or will you just walk alongside of it? And so Balthazar's the one being dragged. So it's very entertaining seeing him go up against the plot and trying to twist things, trying to get out of things. He's always going to be the wild card ruiner of the plans.
He also just had the constant motivation of wanting to get out and having this pride. So the conflict between his pride of being the third best in Europe and who are the top two?
Yeah.
You're constantly going, wait, what? He's so certain he's number 3.
Yeah, like third best magician, second best necromancer.
Yeah. And so you have him saying that, but at the same time trying to break this binding, and he immediately attaches or looks at Baron Rickard, the vampire, and knows, okay, Rickard would be a good ally for this. And he's trying to break it behind people's back and has this interior conflict. And by the end of the book, we've already discussed this in a little bit for thought-provoking, but can't break the binding and goes, oh, this Pope must be some sort of deity or power, etc. But he had constant motivation throughout, which made it very fun. Whereas you have a character, I'll compare them, we can go back to him, but a character like Jakob of Thorn, and he has that plot device of not being able to die and has a past where he's been in so many crusades now and lived hundreds and hundreds of years, where it's a very different kind of interior in conflict, where Balthazar is very present and going, I want to escape, I want to get out of this binding. Jakob of Thorns is, okay, another battle. Another...
He is also a combination of two characters from First Law.
Yes.
Almost like to a T.
Yeah.
It is strange.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of characters of like, Joe took one character from First Law and split two distinct parts of that character's personality and gave it to two separate characters in this book.
Yeah.
Which... still enjoyable. I like that character. So the character reads well, but it was noticeable to me.
The great thing about these characters too, as much as it's almost unfair, because when you're looking at an Abercrombie character, you're already rating it to a standard of, okay, he's a character guy.
Yeah.
So I'm already going, all right, this is what he's known for. He's a character guy. So there's a certain level of quality, especially with when you're shifting point of views. People say this First Law, I agree as well. You immediately know what character you're whose head you're in immediately. You already get, and you don't need the some sort of word to associate, like, oh, you don't need to hear Balthazar to know that this is Balthazar's point of view. You can kind of shift and immediately go within the cast. As overcrowded as the cast was, it was still very easy to distinguish who each character is. They had very within the context of just them, very different motivations, very different influences, backgrounds, was all jammed into a book like this. So already that's just impressive character work to go, wow, you got a cast. Doesn't mean that I got emotionally invested in all the characters as much as I did with First Law or other books that have amazing characters. So I wasn't as emotionally invested, but just as part of the artistry of he created characters that are other authors can't do it to this. His style of character is immediately gripping to go, all right, Brother Diaz from page 1, God damn it, and has this conflict where he wants to impress the Pope, and he in his heart he kind of, you see this first scene of him going on this wagon and having this immediately very a religious man who's not the most favorable or not seen in the best light. It seems very selfish, and he had all these desires to finally go and meet the Pope. And as soon as he does, and he worked all of his life to get to this position, he's then sent on this mission to bring the devils to Troy. And he's going, damn it, I wish I didn't try so hard. And he's put in this position he never wanted to be in the first place. And we get the immediate Alex point of view. From the get-go, you get, again, she's kind of a mix from character in First Law as well. Yeah. But Alex's point of view, you see she is runt out of her luck, will do anything to thieve and get out of things, and she's forced on this quest as well. But each character has an archetype that's very easy to follow and understand. And I guess how much credit do you give that to Abercrombie, just as a character writer? Did you feel the same of just as overcrowded as it might be, or if you wanted some different emotional investment, how do you separate how you feel about maybe Alex or Jakob or Baron Rickard? How do you separate your emotions toward them versus how is the character work done? You get what I mean of those two distinct things?
Yeah, I get what you mean, because emotional connection was not always there with every character.
Yeah.
Yeah, on a technical level, character voice is something that takes some real talent and some real expertise to be able to not say the character's name, and yet through dialogue or thought process, you know who the character is. Joe is a master at character voice, and all the characters have a very distinct voice that's very entertaining. I think something Joe likes to do that I love reading is when a character creates their own cliches for themselves and kind of from their own thought process, they have their own sayings in their head, and it feels right when they are thinking to themselves and how they think about themselves, and it's very repetitive. That is just very cathartic to read. Maybe someone else would say, oh, that's repetitive. I think it's an identifier of someone's thought process, and it's fun. It's fun to read these characters' sayings in different contexts of the story. So with Alex in this one being, and she was a liar. Ask anyone. Ask anyone around. That was her whole saying of her calling herself a piece of shit as and ask anyone around. That is, and seeing how she uses that phrase in different contexts throughout the story is entertaining. The same thing with Viga of leaving them like chestnuts, memories and the past is worthless like nutshells. Leave them by the roadside. Each Balthazar being, my name is Balthazar. I'm
the third greatest.
Yeah, just his pride, his elevated sense, and just that carries into his dialogue, carries into his thought process. Each one of them has it.
And that's the two things from Abercrombie likes to do is one, that repetitiveness, and the second the other one is, I noticed, especially early on, and Jakob does this a ton, they think back to childhood memory, or they think back to a quote somebody told them in the past. Mm-hmm. And Viga does this as well. The characters will look back and use that, bless you, they will use that as part of who their character is. They've heard this from their parent or from a peer or somebody, and that drives them as well. So that he's able to create a character just like that. And even though a complaint to this could be they're all archetypal, or you get Baron Rickard is the soothsayer vampire. You have the disgruntled knight, Jakob, with the remorseful about it, guilty about his past. Each one has an archetype you could fit them in very easily. And having a cast that's this big, you kind of have to lean into that to go, okay, this is this character, this is this character. So I don't blame that much as far as archetypes go. Mm-hmm. And I think one complaint that we've been critiquing this the whole time, but a complaint on the antagonist side for the different cousins and the Duke, or is it Michael at the end? But the Uncle Michael, that character.
Yeah.
The antagonists were just obstacles. They didn't feel as much like characters. They kind of blended. It was, okay, cousin 1, cousin 2, cousin 3, cousin 4.
Yeah, basically.
And yeah, that was the antagonist. And again, what did he want to develop those antagonists deeply? I don't think so. However, it would have been fun in a book like this to have maybe a little Full Metal Alchemist. You know how you have the 7 deadly sins and each antagonist is a different sin. Just something that made them. It was said and told throughout the book. Of I think one of them was the greedy one of them was the ruthless one. An attribute was attributed to each. However, it didn't really affect the scenes that much. They were battle scenes.
They all felt, each cousin felt the exact same.
Yeah.
Like you could swap them out and felt no different. One had wings. Did that mean anything? No.
But
cool scene.
Yeah.
Very.
Can you find it? No way. Oh.
No.
On
the Broken Binding edition, the really cool Balthazar scene of Balthazar dragging the winged cousin into the depths of a plague pit with all these reanimated skeletons. Cool visuals.
Yeah.
Super cool. But does winged cousin mean much? I don't know. About the same as the others.
Equally with Baptiste, we already talked about how Baptiste didn't have very much going on. However, just this is more quality than I don't care much about these characters. I just think they're well done. So
Sure.
I'm not. I don't think that this will be something that, again, I'm comparing it to characters I like more in First Law. So
yeah, that's why they're all of no character in this story is like, oh, I think that's a bad character.
None.
Maybe Baptiste.
But can you even say she's not there? How can you be bad? How can you be bad if I said this to editor Nick too? But I was just going, when Baptiste died, I went, oh wait, okay. She's part of the crew.
She's part of the crew. I forgot about that.
Right.
No, someone also gave a great example of when most of the crew went into the illusionist house and every character in the house got a POV of what they saw in the flashbacks and what twisted vision they were seeing. The only character we didn't get a POV from was Baptiste. And you're like, oh wait, she was still in there? I thought like there's a reason why she wasn't shown it. Like, we got nothing from
Maybe
her.
she'll be back book 2. I don't know.
Probably not. I can't imagine, but meh. But no, that's why none of them are bad, but not all of them are grabbing. So I think it's above average because nothing's bad, but for a large cast of characters, I was only really attached and invested in a very small handful.
I'm with you. I tried to separate attachment versus character work, and that's where my feelings are coming from. But I'm just impressive characters, not like, whoa, great, look how irreplaceable these are, but they are just extremely well done. And that is what, when you're reading an Abercrombie book, hey, if you want characters that are just gonna pop, they pop.
Do you want to go down the list of so we don't miss any of the main characters?
Balthazar, we did. Brother Diaz. Did we want to talk a little bit more about Brother Diaz? What do you have to say about him?
For a long part of this book, I was wondering why this character. Why is this character in here? Because he felt a little unnecessary to both the plot and also just the character dynamic. I didn't see the point of his character until his pairing with Viga made it far more enjoyable. And I liked seeing his journey then. Everything before it, I didn't particularly like him. What about you?
Yeah, I think Brother Diaz's his point early on is to show you the faith a bit about the world and show you a representation of the faith having to go on this journey with little brat Alexia. And he's our entry point into what will be a larger element in the trilogy. So I imagine, again, these characters will kind of push and pull to who gets more focused on in future books. But yeah, him early on, he was supposed to be a bit of a hypocrite, bit of an intrigue, and again,
coward, but also
yeah,
reasonable cowards. If you're surrounded by beasts and monsters and threatened with your life is threatened on a daily basis, I think you're allowed a certain degree of cowardice.
Just
the normal person is allowed a little bit.
Yeah.
But, of course, over the course of the journey becomes braver in the face of death. So
Yes. Yeah.
It's nice to see.
So yeah, Brother Diaz and Alexia. Thoughts on Alexia?
I get her story. I get the point.
Mm-hmm.
But just, I don't know, not particularly enthralling to me. You just see her starting off of this scrappy, no good, thief, liar, all these negative character traits, her having incredible self-confidence issues, and ultimately faking it till she makes it all the way to the throne. I get it, but wasn't particularly enjoyable. It was fine, I guess.
I did enjoy her character as far as character building goes and enjoyability. That one was both up there for me. Where that was a heartwarming part of she's on this quest with devils and finally feels as if she's a part of a team, and she finally feels included by the end, especially with Sunny. But she is the one character who every other point of view, Balthazar and I'm going through Brother Diaz, Sonny, Baron Rickard, they all look at her and kind of act as older brothers in a way. Or she's the one character that nobody goes right out of the way to go, fuck you, Alexia. And she feels for the first time that she has this community, that she was a runt her whole life, a thief. She's not even, we find out at the end she wasn't feeling imposter syndrome. Jai Sadai said this, so shout out to Jai Sadai. I liked how he put it. That at the end she's not an imposter. Sorry, she's not feeling imposter syndrome. He was an imposter. And so she feels this entire time that and her catchphrase in her head is how much of a liar and piece of shit she really is. And finally gets some acceptance and finally gets some people that care for her. And so it was kind of heartwarming to see those scenes where she wasn't on this quest that had your badass moments or your cool action fight scenes, but did bring the group together for me.
That's definitely a different story that I think is far more common, is in a less original, less cliche, or a more cliche story.
Mm-hmm.
Alexia would have these feelings of inadequacy, of being surrounded by this team that always has to help her, and her feeling useless.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the end of the story would actually be the one to turn around and save her friends and all this stuff. That wasn't the story, which I think is a bit more refreshing. It was about the acceptance. She's not feeling inadequate because she can't take on an entire army like Vega can, or all these, like, you're right, the rest of the Devil's team are like older brothers and sisters to her, and she accepts, like, she needs the help. She doesn't have this weird expectation on herself that she needs to fight along with the rest. But she does have the expectation of, like, the role of Empress I'm going to be, I want to succeed at that. I don't want to die immediately on the throne. So I need to become a good Empress.
Yeah.
That's better. It's a better story than a worse writer would have done.
Yeah, I like that part about it. And she also got one-on-one moments with a lot of them too,
Mm-hmm.
which brought out more. And we obviously got more of her point of view to get those, her scenes with Sunny, just kissing Sunny on the lips as well. And that kind of was in the pattern of there was chapter after chapter of sex scenes. I was going, please don't give me another one. Please don't. And it just kept happening with, like, the Count and Countess that we run into. It was like, oh, they're lovers as well. And I was going to get to the point, is every duo in this going to be lovers? I was like, what? And so it was,
man, the Baron and the Baron and Jakob. All right, an odd pairing.
It could have went there, right?
It could have gone.
And so it was cute to see their relationship building, and Sunny and her dynamic was another positive for me. I was going, oh, how wholesome is that? And Sunny as a character, I think why she's going to be an instant favorite for most people as well. And of course, I was almost, the only thing that kept her from just being, oh, one of my favorite characters ever made, is that, when Joe Abercrombie was writing Sunny, going, oh, they're going to fucking eat this up. Oh, they're going to love Sunny. There's going to be Reddit threads, Tumblr threads of people going, oh, Sunny's literally me. So the one thing that kept me from going, Sunny's the best ever, was, oh, he knows what he's doing. And yes, it's working. So I had a bit of a meta thought of Sunny. Yes, I really enjoyed Sunny, where she's always doing these behind the. She's invisible, okay? She's not seen, and she goes and she during fights will go behind Jakob and be like, 3 guys on your left, and then go over there. You're like, oh, Sunny, thanks for the help, and then
she's the ultimate support.
Yeah.
She's the ultimate support member.
It's so fun,
and just. How many different characters that when Joe writes these grimdark worlds and these just, detestable characters, your lovable rogues, but ultimately characters that it's like, sometimes the best we can hope for is, the least bad option.
Mm-hmm.
And Sunny is just genuinely a good person. Like, I can't remember the last Abercrombie character I've read from him that's like genuinely just good. Like, the world has been terrible to Sunny. Everyone has done awful things where she's lived a terrible life of persecution, rejection, everything you can throw at her. And ultimately, she still is good. She wants to do good for others. She is generally just a positive person that likes helping others.
And it's not a selfish good, too, because when she talks internally about why she does it, she just goes, it kind of makes people happier.
Yeah.
And
just generally, like,
it's just...
I know people don't like me, but I like people. I just want them to be a little bit happier in their day.
Damn it, Sunny, you're so...
One of the funnier things of how she doesn't just help out in fights. She goes invisible for, like, when Vega is off, screwing some guy. Sunny comes behind, picks up the dropped clothing, folds it neatly and puts it next to Vega. So when Vega wakes up, she's like, all my clothes are just like nicely folded here. Neat.
It's a thankless job too, because it's not as they're all going, thanks Sunny for this. She'll like pick up trash for people.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
I tie their shoes. Like if I notice their shoes are untied, I'll tie their shoes while I'm invisible.
She's going to, if this gets adapted, she's going to be an instant favorite. Everybody's going to go crazy over Sunny. I can already see it. She's going to be, everywhere.
Yeah, and it's just the fun dichotomy. Almost every character gets your what is the impression of the character, and like they're seen as a devil, this monster, terrible, and then you get their POV, and you're just like, aw. And Sunny's the biggest one, where this elf, and from the outside, it's like elves are cannibals, and just her kind of stone face, this mysterious, like she just pops out of nowhere and almost feels intimidating. And then you get her perspective, and she's just little ball of sunshine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And at this point, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think our cast was 8, right? We have Balthazar, Brother Diaz, Alexia, Vega, Sunny, Baptiste, and the 2 we didn't talk. We still got to go: Baron Rickard, the vampire, and Jakob of Thorn. I believe that was the cast.
Yep.
I had this all written down. I hope I didn't. Yeah, that was the cast.
Baron Rickard, I think, will be very quick. We don't get much of him, if at all. He's a vampire, and he glamours people.
He's the soothsayer, and
there's something interesting. Someone mentioned in our book club discussion that the one interesting note about him, by the end, it's revealed that because the papal binding is directly tied to the soul, because vampires don't have souls, he's actually there voluntarily. You think the entire time that he is being forced along on this mission, but looking back on it, of how he doesn't actually help out all the time. Very often you find him in the background not helping the team, but the times he does, so he is there voluntarily, and the 2 times he's like more directly involved is to help Sunny out. And so the thought process from it is like, why does he like Sunny so much, other than the reason like we all as readers like Sunny? There's a greater reason why the vampire's there. And so I think that'll be a focus. I guess it'll be a focus in book 2. But other than that, is there anything else to say about him?
Although there was the complaint I made about lack of the tension, or that tension you feel of, what's going to happen with these characters, which is fine. He and a character such as Vega had that power that made for a cool scene. Vega's was eating people. His was the charm and soothsaying. And he kind of had the get out of jail free card when they were, again, in a messy situation, could then disperse. And I think that happened when they were in Venice at the end of part 1, part 2 was it? But where he comes in clutch for the team as well, and you start to see the dialogue or the thought process of even our main characters being soothed. So the element of him was just you got scenes. They weren't action scenes, but they were charm scenes. So
Yeah.
that's what he felt like he added to the team and the archetype there. So I have nothing else because Jakob of Thorn was given a lot of attention in the book.
Yeah. But ultimately, by the end of the book, not completely satisfying. Like, it's clearly a character that will continue on and just... I don't know. I didn't find the character nearly as compelling. What about you?
Jakob of Thorn, his constant reflection to his past and just his attitude toward battle.
Mm-hmm.
And Abercrombie-esque character, again, don't want to just keep comparing this to other Abercrombie characters. I can't say any of these characters that were my favorites are compelling, so I wouldn't want to use that word. I just use another part of the team that as soon as you got into his headspace, we're like, okay, this is a Jakob chapter. And he, again, very consistent throughout. You saw him die. Was it several times? How many times did he die in this book?
A handful.
A handful. And the fun aspect of his character is when he was fighting one of the cousins, and I think the chapter title was "A Draw is Good Enough."
Yeah.
Just the way he fights, because he can come back and he's a cursed knight. All he needs to do is draw. So just the fighting tactic and how that influences how he lives and his attitude is all very consistent. And he's a well done character. Again, my favorite, no, but all these characters are quality. So except Baptiste and the antagonist. So that's my conclusion of great characters. And when book 2 comes out, I'm not gonna be reading it right away, but I'll be like, okay, as soon as book 2 comes out, I will not have to reread. I'll pick it up, and then all these characters will be like, that's that one. Or there's those series where you read a book 1, and then you pick up book 2, and you go, oh my god, what happened in book 1? Or what?
Yeah.
Who is that again? Oh, okay.
I get you.
Any other thoughts on characters?
That's about it. I mean, yeah. Above average characters.
I thought you gave it really good.
Oh, sorry.
3.75.
3.75.
Yeah.
Really good. Like, above good, I think Joe Abercrombie just is a consistently good character writer. However, with our complaints of, I think he's done better, and so just not as compelling as many others.
Sure.
So that's where I'm landing.
Very fair. What'd you give plot out of 5 stars?
I give this a 3.25. Again, like above average. I wouldn't say it's a particularly good plot. It's above average.
I give it a 3.5. I'd say good plot. It's a good plot. And we talked about the overarching plot and how it's structured. How would you say the A-B stories worked, or what was the promise, progress, payoff of this? How would you like to break it down?
I mean, sure. It was.
You looked like you just had a dazzling time going. Yeah, okay, fuck.
I mean, it's not a complicated plot.
No,
it's the cast of the Devils are tasked with getting Alex onto the throne of Troy, and the cousins are in the way. You have 4 mini bosses, 4 mini bosses of the cousins keep coming in each part and standing in the way with their own flavor of army and, their own attitude, which is all about the same. And that is the A plot, and it takes up the majority of it. The B plot is all of the characters' individual motivations, most of them being not as significant to the overarching plot. So most characters' B plots is minor in terms of the story, but major in terms of the character. So it doesn't interfere. The reason why Balthazar is so entertaining is because his B plot, it actually can change the A plot, and his B plot is in direct confrontation with the A plot, which makes it fun. That's very enjoyable. I think that's the reason why people like the Suicide Squad type of stories, is you have characters that are evil forced to do good, and often you have these characters try and wiggle out of their responsibilities of, like, they're being forced on this mission, and then while on the mission they try and find a loophole and try and wiggle their way out of it. And it's fun to see the moment of like, oh, we're about to accomplish our mission in a team that's all there voluntarily. That's a point of celebration. Like, okay, we almost succeed. We're about to succeed. In these type of characters, you have one character kick. Like a member of the team can ruin everything because they're not there voluntarily. So that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's the plot generally. You got it definitely felt like your movie or video game plot of, all right, now we're going to this area and it's time to face the next mini boss. And
yeah, who said that from the book club? I want to give credit. Who's
I
saying
know.
that?
I'm trying to remember.
Sorry, we give you credit. Yes, but video game-esque, I see that. I think I think the big thing to talk about with the plot as well is the end twists. There was 2 twists at the end. One of them was Alexia actually not being actual Alex.
Mm-hmm.
She just is impersonating Alex the whole time. That was, I didn't see it coming personally. We polled the book club, and I think it was 60% said they saw it coming, 60, 65, then 30, 35 didn't see it coming.
I didn't because I thought it was too obvious. I thought it was almost the red herring.
Gotcha.
Of course, the liar thief would not be true.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the fact that Joe really kind of beat you over the head with, the necklace, the birthmark, and just that it was so obvious that it would have been like, nah, actually the twist is that she actually literally is the princess, the long lost princess.
Yeah.
So I didn't see the twist coming, but to me it wasn't significant. Like I don't think the character or the story changes really at all if you remove the twist.
Yeah, that was a complaint of that. Does that twist impact the plot?
I didn't think so. What about you?
It came as a bit of a surprise. I wasn't thinking too much about it, and when it happened, I went, oh, that makes sense suddenly. I think it doesn't change the plot because regardless if that was real Alexia or fake Alexia, the plot still happens. It's more of a character thing. For the fact she actually is an imposter just shows you why she's been feeling this entire time that she has low self-esteem. Again, Jai said this, not imposter syndrome, actual imposter. She's in this position, and the foreign attitude she has toward it. And you know how you can feel imposter syndrome as though, oh, you actually have royal heritage, and even if you're going on this quest and you were born somewhere else and you didn't grow up under the royalty, but you have this knowledge that you're actually the royalty. She knows she's not, so it kind of just added that layer of lack of belief. So if anything, it just added more to make sense for Alexia's character. As a plot point, it could have been the actual Alex, and the plot would have still happened. So
I think even character that for how this story was progressed, I don't think there's too much of a difference between being an actual imposter and imposter syndrome. Of you remove that plot point and it all still tracks of her knowingly going, hey, look, I've never grown up as a princess. I've never lived this life. I am a thief. And so her secret history is she could still be the imposter. I don't think really anything changes. Now here's
actually,
the addition.
I take it back though. I changed my mind. Yeah. Oh, good. You have addition though.
Yeah. Here's what I think could have been changed with some alteration of in this plot. It is pretty early on where Alex is saying like, hey, I'm just gonna ride this con until I can hop off the train. But then pretty early on, she realizes it's either death or Empress.
Mm-hmm.
I choose Empress, and so she's forced to go along this line. And so her path being decided and not wanting to die, and so she becomes Empress because she has to survive.
Yeah.
Now, maybe if she actually isn't the real princess and the real princess was out there, still alive, and there was some way out.
Conflict.
So if by the end she's given the opportunity to, hey, you were only wanting to be Empress because it was your only way out, the only ticket out from being killed. If at the 11th hour she is given the opportunity to escape and leave the responsibility, leave her position as Empress and still live, but then she still chooses to
because the devils are her.
because
she
that,
feels
or
her
she has
responsibility,
grown,
yeah.
or now she has found something she wants.
Mm.
She believes she can do it, and like, no, I've gone through this, but I will do it. Like, forget like being forced. I'm going to do it. Well, and then it becomes her active choice. Then I think the idea of, hey, she's not. So there's the added element of, no, she has this, and because she's the secret princess, the long lost princess, she has this blood-bound duty to become Empress. And then at the end of the book reveals, actually, she's been an imposter this whole time. And then given the option to leave, where, like, hey, look, you're not the secret princess. You're not this. You can leave. Now it's an interesting choice of her staying or going. But that wasn't what happened. So, like, to me, it's something that could have been removed and doesn't really affect the character or plot.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. I'm sure Abercrombie does do this where he makes the character makes a decision that's you feel good for them and you feel like they made a positive choice. But just in general, the grimdark nature of things you're not gonna often get that ending of, I hope for your character.
You could take it even more sinister way. It's like, nah, now she just wants power. Maybe the real princess comes forward, like,
that seems
she's
more
presented,
Abercrombie-esque, yeah.
and then instead of leaving with her friends at the Devils and like escaping and getting to live but not hold the responsibility, she decides to shun or throw off the actual real princess and decides to like make an active decision at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Could take it a negative way if he wants, but ultimately
the decision you wanted more behind that than just a twist.
The whole thing is her being forced to be Empress or die. And so it'd be interesting at the very end of she's given a third option, and then we see what she chooses.
Mm-hmm.
And so the twist of her not being the real princess would matter then. But in this book, it doesn't.
Yeah,
so that's where I'm at.
Yeah, that twist and plot point also was just something that was, okay, that makes sense with Alex's character. Doesn't do much for the plot. It does show that the organization, they're willing to fake it and do what they can, or how much knowledge they have behind it, but they are willing to do whatever to unite from the schism that begin with. Because the whole reason they're on this quest is because the church is divided. There's a schism. They need to unite it. And going to Troy to have the real Empress and make the East and West in this alternate world where it's not the schism in our world sense, but it's a schism in a world where Carthage actually beat Rome. And we'll get into that with the world. But it kind of shows what the Pope was willing to do. It shows what the church was willing to do to put even an imposter in this position. I think I agree with you, but I think Abercrombie's plots and storytelling are never, I shouldn't say never. That's a plot I'd be interested in, but is there just something about this style of book as well where is that, I guess, what was his intention with that twist? What do you think the point of Alex's character was then at the end of the plot there to show? Why was that revealed? Why was that important enough? Do you just feel it wasn't justified to do that?
I don't think it was justified enough.
Needed
I think
more.
The point, at least my thought of what Joe meant by it is what was talked about before of, no, she doesn't have imposter syndrome. No, she's an actually imposter. So all the negative thoughts that she was having that were kind of, as the audience members going, this is unjustified. She deserves this role. Like she's going to reclaim her rightful place.
Yeah.
And then it's revealed that actually, no, she doesn't deserve any of this.
Right.
And all of her negative thoughts of her being a liar, a thief, all this stuff is just true. She is a liar. She doesn't deserve her position. She isn't the secret princess. She is a fraud. So
that's
the point. I don't think
there's no more
works
to
as
it.
well.
Yeah. And there's the Duke Michael betrayal.
Yeah, that was obvious.
And there was the part 4. We go to the city of Troy, and all of a sudden things are going super well. And you're going, she's accepted right away. And your brain immediately goes, okay, things are going way too well. The betrayal's coming. Things are going to fall through, and they're going to need that. They're going to need to save the day again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens. Duke Michael betrays, and you have to have a big battle sequence. They win at the end. people go back into their cages. That's how the book ends with the sequel, or what this book ends with is a Jakob of Thorn potentially being another crusade against the elves. Is essentially where this is then leading, where we're finally going to meet these elves that aren't sunny. So maybe they're not as kind. Who knows what was being said about them? But that is that final part of the book. The part 4 is that where you felt the most. Were you disappointed by that ending? Was it just fine?
It was fun. It was a fun ending. So
Yeah.
I was thoroughly entertained by the ending.
Good.
Knew where it was coming, saw it coming, but I enjoyed it a lot.
Entertained.
Yeah. Is that about it for plot?
Anything else you got to say about it?
No, that's about it.
All right, yeah, I guess that's it. But plot's very easy to explain. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you have for world building? What'd you give that out of 5 stars?
I gave it a 3.25. Above average. What about you?
2.75. I gave it below average.
Understandable.
Yeah.
I'm. The more I think about it, like on reflection, yeah, there's elements that could take you out of the immersion. But while I was there, I was fairly immersed. I didn't have really too many moments of like taken out of the story by the world building. But I thought it was fine.
What did you think about, I guess, some of the changes in the history? That was a big thing we just mentioned a second ago. Carthage won, not Rome, in the Punic Wars. Troy is still around. The church, the Catholic Church, Jesus was female, or Jesus in this world was female. There was a lot of those changes that just made this an alternate Europe. Thoughts on that? Or want me to start off with thoughts?
You start off this one.
Yeah, I guess a lot of the changes made in world building here, I already went in not expecting much on the world aspect. It's one of those things where changes were made for change's sake, and it's not as though that change made the world and affected everything down to the economy of, oh, okay, the world is like this and it all connects and makes sense, other than made fun changes that are just setting attributes. So when we were in Venice, because of his prose, I feel we're in this setting. It feels like Venice. It feels like this alternate Venice in a way. You have all of the canals, etc. Feels like the place, cool. But as far as the lore, the deeper world to it, sure, the elves are to the east. It was fine. I just think below average because there were moments where we got some monologuing from Balthasar to Alex, where Alex was one-on-ones. One of the things where, Alex's character really developed with learning how to read, which we didn't mention earlier, from Balthasar, and Balthasar teaching history.
Well, Brother Diaz taught her how to read.
Sorry, Brother Diaz teaching her how to read.
Balthasar taught her more history.
Balthasar history, Diaz reading. Balthasar teaching her history, we kind of got some info dumps on world aspects. And every time there was a world building dump or just how things worked, I never found myself wanting to learn more. I was going, okay, factoid. Neat. And so it's more of a representation of it existed in alternate Europe.
If my expectations were different, I would be disappointed, but
I wasn't disappointed.
Yes,
Yeah.
The fact that I wasn't removed from immersion and that I liked many of the settings, it was described well. I like those aspects. Some of the more significant changes about the church I think were interesting and led to fun scenes. I think probably the more interesting scene that we'll probably get more of in book 2 is the idea of the new pope being this 10-year-old girl and what that means, and her being this, arguably the second coming of Christ for this world of grand magical power, and how the church is going to manipulate her. All this stuff. Cool. Every other little change is just fine, but doesn't have any real meaning.
And it just all felt superfluous, if I want to use a word.
There you go. Good word.
It just all felt there, or superficial, just changes, because I know when Abercrombie's making this, I don't know for a fact, but he's making this world and just going, oh, I want this Devil's Plot Suicide Squad, which he's probably not thinking that. I think in post he realized it could be attributed or explained as Suicide Squad plot. But that the effort is not being put into the world. Maybe it's even a little bit my biases of knowing when he's writing this book, I know he is giving almost last priority to immersing you in the world. is he immersing you in the setting and getting you to feel as this your surroundings are very certain and
Yeah.
you're in that location? Sure, that's all.
Setting
good
is
and fun.
always great.
Yeah.
But yeah, the grander world is
It's
fine.
It is my generic complaint. I won't. It doesn't do this. It's not bad, but it's one of my complaints about Jade City, and people might disagree, but C.S. Lewis doesn't disagree. It's that when you use the veneer of a fantasy world or a sci-fi story, a story there that could have just been told at home, but you don't do anything with the fantasy or sci-fi setting, right? So it's my personal feeling of Jade City. There's a magic element, won't get into it, but it's a story that is, I've seen that story countless times in other books that just don't use fantasy, and the fantasy just feels like, okay, it just adds a fantasy veneer, just as if you're using the genre itself more for like how you can use a trope is people like the feeling that you have, and it's a universal appeal, and so people like tropes. That's why a person puts trope in there. Almost feels like you're using the fantasy setting more as a trope, which tropes aren't a bad thing. Tropes are totally fine. Cliches are bad, but you're using the fantasy setting more as a tool than you are using it as something to impact your story. Incredibly so.
I would say this one is almost the opposite, where he's not using the fantasy genre as a veneer, but actually the historical fantasy as a veneer. Like the fact that this takes place in an alternate history Europe, it doesn't have to.
Yeah.
You could make this, if it was just generic fantasy, it would play exactly the same. And there's basically no difference.
How's that the opposite?
Well, rather than because the fantasy elements of there being, vampires, werewolves, all of those elements are actually, it'd be harder to tell this story in the real, quote unquote, real world.
Because it's vampires and all that.
Because of all these monsters and all that says about the story and the characters. But the reverse of it taking place in an alternate Europe, that part is underutilized.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay,
it's that alternate history stuff that's used. It's maybe it's not historical fiction. The genre he's using an alternate Europe fantasy, so I don't know what word label to use on that. But yeah, all that stuff just feels as changes are made because he needs to tell the story in some way. So again, that just goes to show he's not focusing on that setting, and that shows that I'm not going to be thinking about the Devil's World anytime soon. It's just that veneer. It's okay. You needed something. You needed a conduit to your story, and that is the conduit, and that's all it is. It is possibly in the future we'll get more background about the elves, and it could get more interesting. Yeah, there's things there in tidbits that I could get invested in, but as of this presentation, it's just
because there is. It was a backdrop to a lot of the story, but it will clearly go into it, I believe, more in the second and third books. But the bigger background plot line is the church basically preparing to do another crusade to take back the Holy Land from the elves. So in this history, the Catholic Church is still the Catholic Church, kinda, and then instead of Muslims being in this world, it is elves. So the elves are currently they crusaded themselves, took the Holy Land back from the Catholics, and now the Catholics are preparing to crusade again to take it back from the elves. So that's their role in history. But yeah, in this story, it's interesting of the Muslims are gone, replaced with elves, but the Catholics.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier.
I don't think there's much significance to that. I know in our book club discussion there was of why, because it's grim dark fantasy where the Catholic Church just gets the it's a bunch of hypocrites. They're willing to work with devils and just the kind of the manipulation of the Catholic Church, evil, bad church. But the Islam is then let's not criticize or even do a negative portrayal of Islam. We're just going to completely replace it and make it elves. Is that a cop out, or is that just Joe didn't want to tell that story and he's I just want it to be elves,
or doesn't know it as well as he knows Catholicism or Christianity as well?
Yeah.
So
I lean more on he wanted to tell the idea of Crusades and he just didn't want to deal with, he'd rather have the elves be there than having another group of fantasy humans with, representing a alternate version of Islam.
Right.
My guess is he just wanted to tell it a little bit easier and make it his own.
It reminded me too how Jesus was female in this book. So
Yep.
how was there was the two different schisms in the church? One was still sexist, right? Or what?
I mean, they're both sexist in some ways.
Yeah, it just one was looking at. I'm not remembering the detail of this well enough to talk about it, but I'm trying to see if you remember.
Basically, because Jesus was female, the one side of the church has priests, so the main character's perspective, the Pope's side of the schism, has women as priests.
Mm-hmm.
Because Jesus was a woman.
Yeah.
So that's why priests are women in that version. But the other side, the schism, has what is their name? Like the high priest, what's the high bishop, whatever the other side of the schism is.
The bad guy.
The bad guy,
Yeah.
basically. Their side, priests are only men because God is still masculine role, and so only, God being the father is, priests be men. Now, something that I don't think it was meant to, and this is maybe just this is minor, I guess,
Mhm.
world building, is the word Pope. It, is based on, Lad being like the father.
Mm.
And so the Pope being a woman and seemingly always have been women, like that's standard, doesn't make sense. That there should be a different word in this world. It wouldn't be Pope. Like the fact that like that word doesn't make sense for
The world building. Yeah.
the world building aspect.
Which
Like that's like the most direct, like that probably should have changed, but if it did, then people wouldn't recognize
Would you understand what the alternate pope is? Maybe you call it Popa.
Whatever it is, but that
Yeah.
is wrong.
Yeah.
That's just like if you're gonna change it, you need to change that word.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that with Abercrombie, obviously interested in history, he had those tidbits where you can go, oh, okay, he looked into Punic and he looked into enough to change things.
Mm-hmm.
On my basic historical knowledge, you see some mentions of, oh, in this world, Hector humbled Achilles instead of the other way around. Some of the ancient Greeks, those tales were all flipped. Now, I'm reiterating this, but your point that you just made makes me want to double down on it. Of just a lot of these things are both surface level or just not the focus of the book, which makes it. If I was to think harder about it, like you mentioned Pope, I didn't know that Pope meant father, so I wouldn't have caught that.
It doesn't mean father, but it's based on
it's
masculine. It's based on the word father.
I'll take your word for it. And just it seems as though because these things are surface level at the moment, that as soon as you start to pick in or question it, that some of the things will just go, wait, why is that? How's that puzzle piece fit together? But again, it was a conduit for the story.
Yeah, no, I mean,
it was.
I'm not gonna
I'm not overthinking this one. So
yeah, no, that is a nitpick. I would say, girl Pope. That's I think my larger nitpick of like just change the word, like make a change to that, and like you would get along just fine. But
yeah, that's
my larger nitpick.
Makes sense. What about Prose or anything else world building?
No, that's about it.
Prose out of 5 stars.
4.25. Really great.
4.5. Spectacular.
Yeah, Joe Abercrombie knows how to turn a phrase.
Yeah.
The scene that I read out in the very beginning is just visceral, fun. Oof. All of his descriptions of the landscape. I particularly enjoyed the scene that is shown on the little edge, but sorry, the camera is hard to get the light showing on here.
Oh, that's really tough. Oh, there
I know. I'm sorry. If I push the book closer in, it'll be out of focus, so I have to keep it here. But take a look at the edge of the Devil's Broken Binding edition. That scene in the book, woo, Nelly. It's fun. Oh, it was so cool. I needed some like, heavy metal music to play in the background there while that scene was going.
That there's a reason they put it on the side cover there, or
yeah.
on the pages on the side. Yeah, he's an amazing writer where every scene, especially that good meat scene, I'll give credit to your narration as well. I just was feeling the emotions again of going, wow, that you're squirming. You're feeling as if every verb he uses, he's a verb master. He knows what verb to use and uses them quite often, where I know this is a general criticism or general feedback people will give to newer writers, where don't use gerunds as much, INGs, don't use INGs, try to use verbs instead of using a bunch of adverbs and don't say, hey, he was really smart. Say, he was intelligent. That's a very basic one. A lot of better examples, but Joe Abercrombie has obviously mastered that, where he finds the right verb that gets that reaction out of you. Because often when you think of descriptions come from a sense of what kind of how many different ways can you describe an action in an action scene? Verbs describe the action, because you could say there's tons of different ways to describe you running. The word run is just run. Okay, sprint, jog, trot. All these different things matter, and then in the context of the other words you use. So when you have that one scene where you have that one sentence where you use like 5 verbs in a row, that's what I'm talking about there.
Let me see where
squirming something.
There we go. So the arm snapped first, went floppy as a sock of porridge, and she squealed, piggy squeals, and beat away with a shield, clobbered with the rim as the Vega wolf snarled in frustration. The bits of arm still wedged in her teeth. Here's the part. She wriggled her head to get the best grip, biting, twisting, biting, wrenching, biting. Squeals became screams. So the main thing is the biting, twisting, biting, wrenching, biting.
And even before here, can I pick that up real quick? Because
Go ahead.
Even before, where was that mid-page right here? Or
where are you trying to find?
Ripped from fists. She slipped under. Where was the first part? Where'd you start? The Vega wolf, the arm snapped first. Yeah, even where it says the arm snapped verb went floppy as a sock of porridge. She squealed, piggy squeals, and beat away with the shield, clobbered with the rim, snarled. So you already have snapped, clobbered, snarled, squealed. Again, going wriggled, twisting, biting. 7 verbs in that one sentence of just going, okay, that's why you're not just getting the same description of something. And he's using repetition in an intentional way as well, of biting, twisting, biting.
I notice with Joe's writing more often than other authors is he uses repetition in freight, like not just using repetition of individual words to add emphasis and to, draw attention to things, but also in some degree works to a lesser degree similar to poetry of, where the beginning line matches the ending line. It's the same thing of having the phrase start with a word and then the end of the phrase ends with the same word. Joe does that a lot, but he does it with words. He also does it with phrases of each character having their catchphrase.
Yes.
And saying the same phrase in different contexts or then saying almost the same phrase and then changing a word of it to mean something completely different and showing how much things have changed. I've noticed that with his writing, and I really love it.
Good observation there too. Yeah, that and you even see from that descriptor use, like obviously he used gerunds, he used biting, twisting with those ing words. Rules are you don't always listen to the basic writing advice you get as well. That's the thing. There's not one way to write something, but look at the people like Joe Abercrombie who have a certain style and go, oh, what can you emulate from that? There's stuff to study with the Abercrombie prose. And I think of all things, so he's also known for his witty dialogue. I think the one detractor in this, humor didn't hit for me as much. So I was like, humor's kind of fine. But the action scenes and descriptions are what makes this amazing. Is there anything else you want to discuss about his prose?
Particularly my favorite dialogue scene was the thing I mentioned with Vega and Brother Diaz. Of one, it's again good setup for having Vega in her first POV, or first Vega, not Vega Wolf POV. We have Vega trying, like, trying to talk with the others, but mostly talking to herself and having this internal dialogue that is in many ways confusing. And you see how the others just don't understand her and find her just speaking nonsense and just being caught off track and never keeping to the point. But being in her head, you see some degree of a through line, and how enjoyable it is to compare that conversation to her talking with Brother Diaz, and with the expectation of, oh, Brother Diaz is going to be frustrated, not understand her, and ultimately discount her. And in this moment, you see both Brother Diaz be frustrated, but then have a degree of patience and tries to understand and finishes her sentence. And the fact that her repeated catchphrase is, leave memories like nutshells.
Chestnuts.
Chestnuts. I think it's nutshells. I'm not sure, but like leave.
You've been saying chestnuts.
I've
Was
said
it not
chestnuts.
chestnuts?
I don't think it's chestnuts.
Why should it be like almonds?
I know. But nutshells, you don't carry them with you. Once you're done, you throw it off to the side. And Brother Diaz finishing the phrase and going, her saying, yeah, it's useless. You leave by the side, and him saying, like nutshells, and her just kind of like a degree of joy of like, yes, exactly like nutshells. You get it. You understand me. And her just this kind of euphoria from her of having a genuine conversation where someone else like was reading her thoughts.
That's a good scene to bring up. Yeah.
I really enjoyed that dialogue scene. And again, it's something that it's repetitive in nature. You almost had the same conversation, but in different contexts with different people.
Yeah.
And it shows the growth and change. So Joe's good at that stuff.
He'd be a good writer.
He'd be good. He's good.
If this same exact plot with these same characters and everything was done, we read this book called The Devils, this would be like a 2.5. it would be. It'd be just because he elevates it with just he's a good writer. He can tell a story in a way. Elevates it to quality work. It was good, well done, and
a last thing though, if we're wrapping up this stuff.
Yes.
What would you say? Do you think personally that this is the best entry for someone to read Joe Abercrombie's work, or should they read something like First Law?
So after you've watched this whole spoiler review of it, let's think. Should they read this book that we spoiled completely?
The main thing is for someone watching, should they recommend this book to their friends, or should they recommend First Law first?
I would say life's too short. Do First Law. Even though the ending disappointed me. The first book of First Law I like better than the first book of The Devils. I'll say that. But I think it comes down to if they read this first and then the First Law, they might read the First Law and go, oh, that's kind of like Vega. Yeah. So your first introduction matters a lot. I would say start with First Law. Play itself.
There is the argument that, at least in our opinion, that the characters of First Law are better. So you would read this and go, okay, I really like this. Feels more originally. You get an introduction to Abercrombie's style, and then you read the First Law, you read The Blade itself, and you go, wow, this is like those other characters, but better. It's like,
maybe you'll have that reaction,
maybe that's the right way to introduce it. I'm not sure. There's a certain type of reader I would recommend this first over First Law. Because...
Which reader?
Mainly a person who wouldn't like The Blade itself's plot. The amount of times I've heard people DNF The Blade itself because they feel like nothing happened is like, that's not something to ignore. That is a lot of people's experience. I may vehemently disagree with it.
You would recommend this 3.25 plot.
Yeah, I mean it's clear. The plot is understandable, clear, in your face of like you know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Blade itself, you're like, where's the plot? You have to hunt, you have to find it. And then it's like a puzzle piece. And we're not gonna get into it. Joe's wrong. Everyone else is wrong. Blade itself has a masterful plot, but that's beside the point.
But then why would you recommend? But you just said this plot it's more understandable.
It's more understandable.
But you like the plot.
I personally,
of Blade itself better.
That's why I said it depends on the type of reader. Okay. There are certain readers I would say this over The Blade itself.
because you're going, okay, it's video game plot.
Yes.
And you're going, people that want...
That may be a bit more understandable and straightforward.
Got it. Okay. I see what you mean. At the very least, we could say the Broken Binding edition also is gorgeous.
It is.
So, if at the very least, if you like the book well enough to get some of the artwork, highly recommend just for a
Also,
shelf.
this book has maps in it.
Well, we didn't even
It's
mention
Europe.
that. We didn't mention that in the world building, but how lazy can Joe get at this point?
No.
He's like, finally you get a map because you just have to copy and paste it from Google. Friggin' lazy. Okay, where is this?
By the way, First Law does have a map. It's just not in the First Law trilogy. It's in later
Is it later?
books. Yeah. I found that out.
Wait, he added little stick figures, everybody. Look at good for you, Joe. he added little city. What do you mean he is? Some artist that he's a big shot now with James Cameron or whatever.
Yeah, he doesn't.
He's changed since he was on this pod, man.
He has.
He's only responded to every. He's been so kind to us.
he's only responded to every email we sent him
as we bother him.
Oh God,
we should just start emailing him about like, yeah, you got to up that map game, dude. It's.
We're gonna quickly get him to stop replying to emails.
Look at how unique that is. It's called Frankia instead of France. Whoa. It's called. It's still called Troy. Ivonia, Novgorod, Nightland. Norway made it still. Norway's still there.
Norway's
Way
still
to
there.
go, Norway.
There we go.
Hey.
Let's see. Naples, like that's actually real.
Yeah, Naples that's Lesser Italy. We call that Lesser Italy down there.
Yeah, that's not Sicily. Ugh, Sicilians.
Yeah,
Just the
right.
worst type of Italian, really.
They're not even Italian.
Barely.
They're Sicilian.
I know.
Well,
Again,
what's UK called? Is
there's
UK
also
still-
Atlantis. There were,
Oh, neat.
yeah, so there's more things.
The Strait of Gibraltar, that's still there.
Yeah. Nightland, I think that's.
It's not titled Strait of Gibraltar, but I don't know. What's England called up there? What's the UK?
Just Britain. It's, yeah.
So Britain always survives. Every alternate universe, every alternate history.
Britain never dies.
Actually, there's a joke about that in the book.
Yeah,
isn't
no,
there?
there's like, there's the whole thing of, we may be devils, but at least we're not English.
yeah.
Something like so. Always
And
fun.
they always get made fun of. A little self-flagellating humor from Joe.
Mm-hmm.
That is The Devils. Let us know what you thought about the book down below if you'd like to join our book club where we discuss books every month. Link in the top of the description. Rich, did you have a swell time? Did you have a devilish time?
I had a great time. This was a devil of a time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.